In a significant development that has sent ripples through the global economic landscape, the United States and China have reached an agreement to slash tariffs, marking a critical step in de-escalating their ongoing trade conflict. Announced on May 12, 2025, the deal promises to ease the tension between the world's two largest economies, which has long been a source of concern for markets and policymakers alike. The agreement will see the U.S. reduce its tariffs on Chinese imports from a staggering 145% to 30%, while China will reciprocate by cutting its tariffs on American goods from 125% to 10%. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirmed that these new rates would be in effect for 90 days, a temporary measure aimed at stabilizing affected markets and providing a breathing space for ongoing negotiations. Following the announcement, U.S. markets responded positively, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average and S&P 500 witnessing gains of over 2.5%. And the technology-heavy Nasdaq soaring by more than 4%. President Donald Trump, speaking at a briefing on the matter, emphasized that the deal is only a starting point. "We are not looking to hurt China," he said, adding that the agreement includes commitments from China to open its markets to American businesses and eliminate non-monetary trade barriers. Notably, Trump also mentioned that China had agreed to curtail the flow of fentanyl into the U.S., addressing a critical public health concern. Analysts have reacted with cautious optimism. Dan Ives of Wedbush Securities described the announcement as clearly just the start of broader negotiations that could lead to new market highs and bolster the technology sector in 2025. He noted that the tariff reductions could alleviate supply chain concerns that have plagued many industries in recent years. Similarly, Chris Zaccarelli, Chief Investment Officer at Northlight Asset Management, remarked that the potential for all-time highs in the stock market is now back on the table, especially given China's status as the U.S.'s most challenging trading partner. However, not all economic commentators are convinced that the agreement will lead to a swift recovery. Federal Reserve Governor Adriana Kubler warned that even with the tariff reductions, the average rates remain historically high, which could result in slower economic growth and increased inflation. Kubler's remarks at an event in Ireland highlighted the complexities of measuring economic performance in the current climate, suggesting that companies might soon pass on increased costs to consumers. In a broader context, Trump's administration has also been active in other international negotiations. The president credited recent diplomatic efforts, including a ceasefire brokered between India and Pakistan, to the leverage gained from trade negotiations. He asserted that U.S. trade power was instrumental in persuading both nations to step back from escalating tensions. As the new tariff rates take effect, the implications for both economies remain to be seen. With the agreement being characterized as a significant de-escalation, experts suggest that the negotiation process will still face challenges ahead. Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng described the recent talks as candid, in-depth, and constructive, indicating a willingness from both sides to pursue further dialogue. In the coming weeks, President Trump plans to discuss the agreement further with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, potentially setting the stage for more comprehensive negotiations. As both nations navigate their complex relationship, the outcomes of these discussions will be pivotal not only for U.S.-China relations but also for the broader global economy. With the initial steps taken toward reducing tariffs, the focus now shifts to how both economies will leverage this opportunity to foster a more stable and mutually beneficial trade environment. In a significant turn of events that could reshape global trade dynamics, the United States and China have reached a surprise agreement to temporarily reduce tariffs imposed on each other. This development, marked by negotiations in Geneva, is seen as a potential reprieve for the global economy, which has felt the tremors of escalating trade tensions for years. The deal, announced on May 12, 2025, has led to a surge in global stock markets, signaling renewed investor confidence amid ongoing uncertainties. The agreement comes as both nations grapple with the economic fallout from a protracted trade war. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent noted during a press conference that neither side wanted a decoupling of their economies, acknowledging the detrimental impact high tariffs have had, which he described as akin to an embargo. The U.S. will reduce tariffs on Chinese imports from 145% to 30%, while China will lower its tariffs on U.S. goods from 125% to 10%. This unexpected concession from both sides highlights the urgency to address economic strains and the desire to foster trade relations. Economists largely view the agreement as a more favorable outcome than anticipated. Jiwei Zheng, chief economist at Pinpoint Asset Management in Hong Kong, remarked, "This is very positive news for economies in both countries and for the global economy. With the tariffs reduction, there is hope that the adverse effects on global supply chains will diminish in the short term." The agreement notably allows for a 90-day period during which both sides will engage in ongoing negotiations to address deeper issues beyond tariffs. However, while the pause in tariff increases is a step forward, experts caution that the root causes of the trade conflict remain unresolved. The agreement does not address significant issues such as Chinese government subsidies to key industries, currency manipulation, or geopolitical tensions, particularly concerning Taiwan. Wang Wen, dean of the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies, pointed out that both countries are eager to avoid a worst-case scenario but emphasized that fundamental trade imbalances still exist. The atmosphere in Beijing has shifted dramatically since the start of the negotiations. Once characterized by defiance and a hardline stance against U.S. tariffs, Chinese officials have now adopted a more conciliatory tone. The Chinese Commerce Ministry heralded the agreement as a critical step toward resolving differences and fostering cooperation. Yet they also issued a reminder that the U.S. must correct its wrong practices of unilateral tariff increases, signaling that the negotiation landscape remains fraught with challenges. American businesses have expressed cautious optimism regarding the deal. The temporary reduction in tariffs is seen as a means to alleviate the economic strain felt by companies and consumers alike. As orders were suspended in anticipation of a trade resolution, many firms are now poised to reactivate supply chains that had been stalled. However, market analysts warn that the relief is temporary and that businesses may face higher transport costs as they rush to fulfill pent-up demand during the negotiation window. President Trump, while celebrating the progress on his Truth Social platform, indicated that full agreement documentation would take time. He expressed hope for further discussions with Chinese President Xi Jinping, highlighting that the goal is not to harm China but to establish more balanced trade practices. In the aftermath of this tentative agreement, the future of U.S.-China relations hangs in the balance. While the initial reactions from global markets and economic analysts suggest a positive outlook, underlying tensions and unresolved issues threaten to complicate further negotiations. The coming months will reveal whether this agreement marks a true turning point in U.S.-China relations or merely a temporary halt in a complex and ongoing trade struggle. As both nations prepare for continued dialogue, the world watches closely, aware that the stakes extend far beyond bilateral trade, impacting global economic stability as a whole. As China's influence in Africa continues to expand, the United States is responding with a renewed commitment to military partnerships aimed at enhancing regional security. This shift underscores the growing competition between the two superpowers and reflects a strategic recalibration in U.S. foreign policy as it seeks to counteract China's burgeoning presence on the continent. In recent months, the U.S. military has bolstered its efforts to forge security partnerships with African nations, emphasizing the importance of collaborative defense initiatives. We recognize the need for a comprehensive approach to security in Africa, one that includes working alongside our African partners to address shared threats, stated U.S. Army General Stephen Townsend, head of U.S. Africa Command. This collaboration comes at a time when China's investments in infrastructure, technology, and military support in Africa have raised concerns within Washington regarding potential geopolitical ramifications. China's ambitions in Africa are not merely economic, they encompass a strategic vision that aims to solidify its geopolitical foothold on the continent. By establishing military relationships and providing arms and training to various African nations, China seeks to enhance its influence and counter U.S. interests. According to a report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Chinese arms exports to Africa have increased significantly over the past decade, with China becoming the continent's largest arms supplier in 2024. The implications of this growing Sino-African partnership are profound. Analysts warn that increased military cooperation between China and African nations could lead to a destabilized regional security environment, complicating U.S. efforts to maintain influence. The U.S. must adapt its strategy to confront not just the economic aspects of Chinese engagement, but also the military implications, emphasized Dr. Elizabeth Economy, a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. In response, the U.S. is not only increasing its military presence but also enhancing its training programs and security assistance initiatives. The establishment of joint training exercises and intelligence sharing agreements aims to improve the operational capabilities of African forces, thus creating a more resilient security architecture against potential threats from extremist groups and foreign adversaries. Moreover, the U.S. has been proactive in addressing the political dimensions of its partnerships in Africa. By advocating for democratic governance and human rights, Washington seeks to differentiate its approach from China's more transactional model. Our partnerships are built on mutual respect and shared values, not just economic transactions, remarked U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken during a recent visit to Kenya. Despite these efforts, challenges remain. The U.S. must navigate the complexities of regional politics, where local preferences and historical ties often dictate relationships. Furthermore, the efficacy of U.S. military aid and training programs has been questioned, particularly in light of past failures in similar initiatives. Looking ahead, the competition for influence in Africa is set to intensify. As China continues to expand its foothold through economic and military means, the U.S. will need to refine its strategies and capitalize on its existing relationships to remain a key player in the region. The stakes are high not only for the U.S. and China but also for the stability and development of African nations, which are caught in the crossfire of great power rivalry. As this dynamic unfolds, the future of U.S.-African relations will undoubtedly hinge on the ability of Washington to adapt and respond effectively to the challenges posed by China's growing presence on the continent.